Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you for tuning in to Cedar Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of July 12th to July 18th. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing Wild Rose, Summer Night, and the fall of the American Empire.
We'll also be discussing one great and one terrible film from the 80s, the continuing dominance of specifically musical documentaries this summer at the Art House, and our Cedar 3 picks for favorite Canadian filmmakers. Well, we always like to start off the show with the last scene first. So, Dave, what's the last film you've seen?
The last film I've seen is the film that I've seen more than any other film in my entire life, and that was Hairspray.
I was going to say, is it Hairspray?
It is the original John Waters Hairspray. Weirdly, I was talking to a friend about his favorite movie is Silence of the Lambs. He has seen it, like, he can't even tell you how many times, but probably at least 100 or whatever. And I said, the only movie I've seen that much is Hairspray. And then when I was thinking, I'm like, maybe I should watch Hairspray. I haven't watched it for a while. And then last night was my fiance and I were unwinding. I said, pick out a movie. And he picked out Hairspray.
Oh, wow. Just meant to be.
Yeah. So last night was my official 101st viewing of the film. So it is a film that I enjoy and obviously have completely memorized. So I'm probably very annoying to watch it with because I know every line in the entire movie.
It's that level too. I think it's Back to the Future for me, where like you can even call out when the camera's going to move. And when every aspect of that movie, you can just kind of narrate as it goes and annoy whoever you're watching it with if you really want to.
Now, I'm going to bring up a story, but I'm not going to have all the details of it, so it's going to be a pointless story. But when I was obsessively watching the movie on VHS back in high school and into college, at one point, I was literally watching it like every day. I'd come home from school and I'd watch the movie. And then there was one day I'm like, I'm going to count how many cuts there are in this movie. So like I actually had a little like tally sheet and I was like a little mark, like how many edits were there in the entire film? And I don't remember the exact number, but I feel like it's like 900 and something. Somewhere in my little nerd notes, I've got that the exact number of edits there are in the movie Hairspray.
I did the same thing with Back to the Future. And I was even trying to calculate at one point, like how many shots I thought included a special effect was one of the other tallies I did too. Because I mean, it was the era of practical effects, and also I was like a kid learning, what all this stuff was, and like I think it was still like blue screen back then was the phrase instead of the green screen and all that. It was like, that fire looks real, but I don't know about you know. So what year did Hairspray come out?
1988.
Okay, so we both watched 80s movies. I watched a terrible 80s movie at the request of a friend. I mentioned that I was severely lacking as a joke in Chuck Norris movies.
Oh, please tell me you watched Invasion USA.
I did. I watched Invasion USA because it was a sort of a consensus amongst a couple people. It was like, well, if you're going to watch a Chuck Norris movie, you should watch Invasion USA. And I didn't realize it was so close to 4th of July, so I don't know if that was just on their brains when they mentioned that.
That's funny.
Man, that is a different era of action movie.
So I actually, the only time I've seen all of Invasion USA was the Cinematheque a few years ago whenever
during
John
the
Ewing
Republican
did his,
convention.
Yeah, he did the Republicans Are Coming series, and he actually showed Invasion USA. Yeah. And it was not one of the better attended films at the Cinematheque, I'm sad to say, but I did bring like a group of 8 people with me. Nice. And I believe we made up 80% of the audience that day. But it was, that movie is insanely terrible and a lot of fun to watch with your friends. That's all I can say.
Yeah, the plot is, in my head, it's one of those movies I can't believe hasn't been remade. I mean, it's very dated in its politics, but the number of movies that Chuck Norris was just churning out at that time period. Actually, I wrote in my notes, I can't believe that Chuck Norris didn't accidentally make Die Hard at some point in the 80s before Die Hard was actually made, because Invasion USA is the invasion of the United States, but it may as well just be like, it's like a Florida swamp and a town. And then there's like, they kind of use news footage to make it seem like it's going on nationwide, but...
Right. But
no,
it's really low budget.
It really isn't, because the budget doesn't allow it to be. But it's got the Chuck Norris, two Uzis, one in each hand, action scenes, shooting up a mall and saving America. So
I remember back in high school, my brother and all of his like football friends had rented that movie, unironically, to watch. And I started watching it with him one night at the house, and as soon as like right at the beginning, someone like literally gets killed with a Coke spoon or a Coke
oh,
straw.
yeah.
Like, yeah, their head and I was like, all right, I'm done. And I like stopped watching it. Like, I think that's within the first 5 minutes. So then I finally decided to revisit it once it had the air of, respectability playing at the Cinematheque.
Right. It was definitely one of those working at the video store too, that like that box cover, I saw, we didn't have what you call a, what do we call it? Like a live store. So you had to bring the box up to the counter to get the movie. Mm-hmm. And I remember being handed that box so many times and reshelving that box so many times that it's kind of weird. I actually hadn't watched it. When we were discussing Chuck Norris movies, I said, I think possibly the only feature film of his I watched was Firewalker.
Oh,
whatever the one is with Louis Gossett Jr., because my dad and I rented it because it looked like an Indiana Jones movie. So,
well, and of course I just had to bring up the video box of Invasion USA, and I think that just the poster, it's the same art as the poster.
I think so.
Is
yeah,
the most quintessential thing of all time. It's like Chuck Norris in his like tight blue jeans with his shirt unbuttoned all the way down to his belly button, holding two guns, shooting them. Yeah, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, America.
Yeah. And so it worked out as an interesting kind of 4th of July, weekend watch by myself because, it was hard to interest anybody else who has, much better film taste in my house to watch it with me.
It'd be interesting to watch that along with like Red Dawn, the sort of, America,
it's a good one.
Invaded in the 80s.
But anyway, so that's what we've been watching recently. What people have been watching recently at the theater is Midsommar opened up this weekend for the what we said last week on the poster, the festivities began.
Yes, the festivities
July 3rd,
began on July.
Which I did not catch up with yet.
Well, shame on you.
I know.
I'm planning on seeing it a second time this week, but it's a great film, and people really did respond to it pretty well here at the Cedar Lee. I think our number one movie though this weekend was Yesterday. People were really enjoying that, and I walked into the theater yesterday during a scene. I haven't seen Yesterday yet, but there's obviously like a concert scene, and it was the loudest music I've ever heard, like coming from the theater.
Oh,
and
really?
I said to the manager that was on duty, I'm like, are people complaining? Like, it's because I was out in the lobby and it seemed loud in the lobby. Yeah. And she's like, so far no one is. Like, yeah, I guess they're just into the concert and like they don't mind. Like the concert scene needs to be loud. So, but yeah, people are really enjoying that one. And Pavarotti is still going strong. It is. People are really loving it. And again, I walked down through the theater last week to get a drink during it was like the middle of the afternoon. And I was behind a group of like 3 or 4 people, and the one man in front of me was singing opera as he was walking through the lobby. So I'm like, I'm guessing I know what movie you just saw or you're on your way to see. So yeah, I enjoyed that.
Well, that ties in pretty perfectly with just the way the art house box office has been going and the specialty box office this weekend. I don't know Leonard Cohen too well music-wise, but the... what is it? The Marion and Leonard, a love story documentary, opened limited and was doing, I guess at this point, not surprisingly, a specialty documentary is doing good business.
Is doing well. Mm-hmm.
This is the era of the specialty documentary doing good in the theaters.
Especially music-related ones.
Especially the music ones, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, like you said, Pavarotti, Echo in the Canyon is holding on really strong. Amazing Grace earlier in the year. So... yeah, the music docs are just killing right now.
Cleaning up. That's the theme of the year.
It still baffles me. I mean, I'm very, I'm happy for it, but it's just like, I don't know what it is about. Like, is it like eventizing music docs specific? It's also so specific that it's music docs. I mean, it was docs that we talked about all last year, but even more niche this year.
And we have, in addition, so we have Marion and Leonard Words of Love coming up. I think that's July 26th here at the Cedar Lee. It opens up. And then we did just finally get a date for the new David Crosby movie, Remember My Name.
Oh, right.
That's August 23rd. So that's next month, towards the end of next month. I think it opens up in New York and LA this month, and maybe next week or the week after, but it's again that slow national rollout, so Cleveland's not getting it till the end of August. But yeah, we had a lot of people as soon as whenever we opened Echo in the Canyon, of course he's in that film as well, and people were asking, when we're going to be playing that. So
well, also just as an easy quick shameless plug, like there's a bunch of other there's like the Rush there's concert films too that are that are coming up too.
Yeah, we're doing a series we call it, we do it almost every year. It just kind of happens that we're doing a rock doc series this week, I think the day that this podcast goes live on the 11th, we are showing the Cure concert, the Cure anniversary show that's over at the Capitol. But we also have Grateful Dead meetup. We're showing the 35th anniversary of Stop Making Sense. So if you go to clevelandcinemas.com, there's information on our What's New page all about the Rock Doc series.
Cool. And we will be right back with the new films opening this week here at the theater.
The first film we're opening this week is Wild Rose. It's a new film directed by Tom Harper about a musician from Glasgow who dreams of becoming a Nashville recording star.
Your Lordship, Miss Harlan has put her childish ways behind her. Her children are living with her once again.
Do you miss me?
She is a promising young country singer.
I'm trying to get to Nashville.
She now works full-time as a daily woman.
I'm trying to be a country singer.
Nobody wants to see a convicted criminal up there.
Johnny Cash is a convicted criminal, you ball bag. Country music is just 3 chords in the truth. Just gets whoever's in there out. I should have been born in America. I'm an American.
It hadn't really occurred to me before seeing this trailer that like that's a Nashville country western singer. That's a uniquely American genre of music.
Yeah, and that's something that the character says in the film, like that she was born in the wrong place. She is an American, is what she says. And, she is a troubled young single mother who just gets out of prison. She's one of those people who's sort of like her own worst enemy in a lot of ways. You know, her behaviors have prevented her. She's got this amazing talent, this amazing voice. And, but, she's just had made terrible life choices and it's holding her back, but she's now finally gonna do what she can to live out her dream. And it's a really great film with an amazing performance by Jessie Buckley, who we showed a film I think last year that she starred in called Beast, and that was the only other thing I'd seen. I haven't watched. She's in Chernobyl right now on HBO, and but the only other thing I've seen her in is Beast, and I had no idea that she had that voice. But apparently she even kind of like she's listed on IMDb as like actor and singer because like she's known almost as much for her voice as she is as her acting, and her voice is amazing. And the soundtrack to this is filled with some interesting, powerful stories. Or powerful songs. It's like we were talking about this kind of performance musical,
right?
Where it's not a burst out into song kind of movie or movie musical, but it is filled with great music and musical performances.
Yeah, I was kind of looking. I didn't read any reviews for this film yet, but so she does all of her own singing in the film. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah,
well, extra bonus points for that, obviously, because you can, you can hold down a musical tune, obviously, very well, spectacularly from what I've heard in this performance as well, but also, a good acting performance as well.
Yeah.
It lined up with, just since we've been doing this podcast, going back to last fall with like the Ethan Hawke film Blaze. We got A Star Is Born, Bohemian Rhapsody. I think Rocket Man's a little different because that seems to be more of a traditional, like break out into song kind of musical with like fantasy sequences. But Her Smell, like we were talking about just a few episodes ago, even yesterday, as you just mentioned, like we're currently showing, like that's not a traditional musical, but like these non-traditional musicals seem to be having quite a resurgence. There's even the one coming up that's all about Bruce Springsteen.
Yep. Blinded by the Light.
So,
which is not a Bruce Springsteen song, but there you go.
That's true. Yeah. But again, speaking of music, it's another way. Like it's connecting with people, and it is kind of an interesting way. What was the term you used? I already forgot it. That was like when you use like Mamma Mia and you use like the songbook from.
That's a jukebox
musical. Yeah. Does that kind of count here? Like, is this her singing country music standards, or is it original music that she sings?
Yeah, no. They none of the songs in it were songs that I had heard that really like struck me as like, oh, I know that song,
Right,
but so I think it's more original stuff.
Okay.
They might not be, but I know that there's at least one or two songs that definitely are because of how they say like she's like I wrote the song,
okay, yeah.
But there's other ones that they could be, but I don't know.
The second film we're opening is Summer Night from director Joseph Cross. This is a coming-of-age story about the complexities of young romantic relationships.
And I got an announcement to make. I'm going to go on an adventure to find myself, and I'm going to find myself. I'm going to go off on an adventure.
Heard you the first time, Andy.
Oh, hello, Vanessa. Have you seen Seth?
You know, I just saw him a second ago. Hey, I'll see you later, right?
What's later? Taylor? What happened to you?
A couple tweakers jumped me on the bike path. My band's playing the Alamo tonight. You should come.
Cool. Can I just see you at the show?
Just tell me what's going on.
I met a guy.
And it also, based on the trailer for this one, it seems like it's one of those like all takes place in one night.
Yes, I believe so. That's the name, Summer Night.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's not plural. It's just Summer Night. It's that one summer night, which this is a directorial debut for Joseph Cross. He's done some acting work previously. But this also then immediately in my head, for a couple different reasons, places it in that kind of like Richard Linklater territory because it's a story told all in one night. But also it stars Eller Coltrane from Boyhood. So that really brings to mind Richard Linklater for me as well. But then there's also that I got to thinking like those all-in-one-night movies like American Graffiti or, well, even Dazed and Confused is kind of more or less like all one long day into the night, or Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. There seems to be this thing with like young, what do they say? The complexities of young romantic relationships. And then you boil it all down into one night. Even Booksmart is all, that one night more or less.
More or less,
well.
yeah. There's a little stuff bookend, but yeah. And when you talk about that, like I can't think of a moment in my life where I was like, boy, that one day was so crazy.
I know, right?
To be made into a movie, but
Yeah. Although if you did make that, honestly, there'd be a lot of just boring, like riding around or like waiting for the phone to get back to you, your friend to get back to you on the phone or doing something. So like you do kind of have to.
Here's my friend coming over to eat cake and watch a movie with me.
Right, to watch Hairspray for the 101st time.
For the 101st time, exactly. Well, the next film that we're going to be opening is a new film from Oscar nominee Denys Arcand, and that is The Fall of the American Empire. This is about a shy and insecure delivery truck driver who accidentally arrives on the scene of a major crime and happens to pick up 2 bags of cash and hides them in his truck.
And I'm sure no complications ensue whatsoever in that situation.
Well, that plot line sounds very much like almost like action movie setup.
It really does.
That is not like Denys Arcand is not traditionally an action.
No, he's not an action guy.
Filmmaker. He's a filmmaker that has been around. Really, kind of came on the scene in the 80s with his film The Decline of the American Empire, which was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film back then, and I remember seeing it at that time. And then in college, I actually took a Canadian cinema class.
Oh, really?
And we talked a lot about him at the time and other, they weren't, there weren't big like Hollywood directors so much that were coming from Canada at the time. Now there certainly are.
Oh, right.
And, other than like maybe Cronenberg would have been probably the only
at the time,
kind of name. And I think Ivan Reitman might be Canadian, but there's some people that are not like, you don't identify them as Canadian. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I feel like if you don't live in Canada for most of your professional career, like,
are you really basically filmmaker?
Well, I'm saying you're like an American filmmaker.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to like Cronenberg, he still is in Toronto and he's still doing all of his stuff up there for the most part. So there's certain people that, that are Canadian, but didn't have so much the Canadian identity in their work. And I think Denys Arcand, being from Quebec, obviously just the language alone is going to have him stand out. But he's a great filmmaker. He's also nominated for his screenplay, I think, for The Barbarian Invasions, which it's been a while since we've had one of his films. But he's a great filmmaker. I haven't seen this one yet, and I'm anxious to see it because I think I've seen probably not all of his works, but the vast majority of them I have seen.
Right. What even with he's also did Jesus of Montreal years ago too.
Oh, love that movie.
And he's got this really, I think, interesting kind of satire wit about him that kind of I'm going to mispronounce the guy's name, Armando Iannucci from England, I think. Right? He's British.
Right.
Who did Death of Stalin, previously did In the Loop, that have these like really biting kind of social satire, kind of political commentary. Like we said, like the premise to that, a shy and insecure delivery truck driver, arrives, stumbles down some bags of cash. He's going more in the satirical route of like the power of money, or I don't know how the fall of the American Empire fits into that, but that's the whole like Americans' obsession with money and greed.
It's basically almost the same plot of like A Simple Plan. You know what I mean?
Right,
where someone like finds all this money and then it like, turns into this kind of thriller. This film does not seem like it's going to be.
Yeah, it doesn't like it's going thriller route.
Yeah.
Well, it's also the main character, the shy and insecure delivery truck driver has, they mentioned in the trailer, I believe, but at least on IMDb's synopsis page, he's got like a couple of degrees, like one degree's in like a master's of philosophy, but he just can't find work or something. So it mixes in a lot of interesting philosophical and social satire elements there as well.
And we should mention that both Summer Night is definitely only here for 1 week because it is booked just as a 1 week exclusive. And then I would expect The Fall of the American Empire to only be playing potentially a week as well because it's opening up on a split schedule just so we can kind of squeeze it in and get it on screen so people have a chance to see it. But I don't know that that one's going to be around too long. So if you're anxious to see it, make sure you make time this week to get to the theater.
And we'll be right back with our Cedar 3 picks for this week. So each week we like to take inspiration from one of the new films opening and suggest 3 films to broaden your cinematic world. And this week our topic was inspired by The Fall of the American Empire and its director Denys Arcand. And I think you already did a pretty good little intro there talking about Canadian filmmakers, Dave, and knowing like how do you get labeled as a Canadian filmmaker. I just went with people that were born in Canada. A couple of them are very specifically like, well, one is very specifically like still, functioning and working in Canada. One is passed on, so no more. But so I guess I have one that's like a secret Canadian. I guess you could call it that.
Stealth Canadian.
The other two are definitely known as like, they're Canadian filmmakers, but, one is obviously, like you kind of mentioned, he's kind of transitioned more to Hollywood at this point, although I don't know where he actually resides at when he's not making movies. But so you stuck with kind of just true Canadian auteurs, or
I did. I tried to. Okay. There's one person that you may challenge me on. I don't know. So the first
if they're born in Canada, it's not much of a challenge.
Yeah, well, but
I'm not going to get all birther on Canadian filmmaker list.
Start the birther conspiracy for Canadian filmmakers.
Right. That's not going to go too far.
Well, the first filmmaker I want to talk about is someone who I'm consistently and continually impressed by. It's Xavier Dolan, who we've shown several of his films. 4. We've shown several of his films here at the Cedar Lee, and a lot of his films. Cedar Lee and the Capitol, and then some of his films have played at the Cinematheque as well. But he's a young guy. I mean, he's literally just turned 30, and he has directed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's made a lot of movies.
Yeah,
and most of them are amazing. I mean, his first film, he was, I think, 19 when he filmed it or something, I Killed My Mother.
Yeah.
And you watch that movie, and he stars in it, too.
Right.
So he wrote it, directed it, and stars in it. And it's an amazing film, and it's an amazing accomplishment, and I'm just blown away by this guy's talent. And he's mostly known now, like Americans see him in films, like he's going to be in the new It sequel that's coming up, so he's doing like big studio films for his acting, but he's still making great, interesting movies, like his movie Mommy, which we showed here at the Cedar Lee.
Really good.
Was fantastic. Tom at the Farm, which is a kind of Hitchcockian thriller.
That's true,
we played that over at the Capitol. I just think he's an amazing, amazing person, and if I ever met him, I'd have such a hard time not like just gushing all over him, because I just think he's just fantastic.
Well, it's great to find that type of filmmaker too that's also wildly prolific. So like you're constantly getting a lot of new content from him, rather than having to wait like 3-4 years for the next new movie from him.
And I did not realize a few weeks ago we talked about Bad Times at the El Royale. He's in that in a small role, and as I was watching it, I'm like, wait a minute, because he was almost a little unrecognizable in the role that he's playing.
Yeah,
because he has such a good American accent in it that I didn't immediately, or he has an accent that's not his normal voice that made me not recognize him immediately, because he can kind of morph into other looks. So I was like, oh my god, that is. So who's the first filmmaker you wanted to talk about?
I had him in a different order, but since we were mentioning how prolific he was, I'm just going to do a quick one-upsmanship on prolific filmmakers. The first guy I picked, he has, well, you probably pick up on this right away, but he has 308 directing credits to his name, which of course means he has long passed, because he worked in the era of short films and silent films, and then he did work in sound films as well. But Max Sennett is from Danville, Quebec. So technically a Canadian filmmaker who I had no idea was.
I didn't realize that he was Canadian either.
Nope. So that's my secret Canadian pick. His big claim to fame is, the Keystone Film Company. He got the Keystone Cops going.
Right.
But he also worked very early on with Charlie Chaplin, Fatty Arbuckle, W.C. Fields, Gloria Swanson, all of, the greats of the era. He was directed by D.W. Griffith. He acted with Mary Pickford, and then, went on to Hollywood eventually after working in New York for years and years.
Sure.
His producer credits are 1,117. Which is just awe-inspiring. But then again, he was making 9 films a week sometimes, because they were 3 minutes long some days. So But that was one of those where I was just looking up, Canadian filmmakers, and I've been going through a book on the early Hollywood musicals, and he didn't come up in there, but I was just kind of getting nostalgic for some old, film history names. It's like, that guy was, I'll have to revisit his filmography there and see what jumps out. But
see, I didn't know he was Canadian. Now,
I didn't either. So
I would not clearly identify him as a Canadian filmmaker, but
right,
we'll allow it. Like you said, no birther conspiracies.
But so I did check on Wikipedia, and he returned to Canada frequently. And at one point, he was completely poor and broke in like the late 30s, and returned to Canada. So like he seemed like he considered it his home.
Okay, good. Well, then when you were talking about prolific filmmakers, I was thinking you were going to go with my next pick, which is probably, I would say, the most quintessential like Canadian filmmaker around right now, and that's Guy Maddin.
Oh, yeah, he's on my list too.
Yeah, Guy Maddin, who is truly one of the most unique filmmakers still working right now.
100%.
And I remember, there is no questioning when you're watching a Guy Maddin movie.
No.
He has such a distinct visual style of using, frequently 8mm or 16mm, just like in super grainy black and white kind of vibes, and just strange, ethereal, almost dreamlike movies. The first film, his first feature that I remember reading about back in 1988 was Tales of the Gimli Hospital. And all the articles I was reading was like, this is the next Eraserhead. Like, this is like the next David Lynch. And so when I finally saw it, I'm like, well, I don't like it as much as all that stuff, like that film specifically, but I totally got what they were saying. And, he has just stuck around, and he's made just amazing movies. Like My Winnipeg is fantastic.
Yeah.
And just
The Forbidden Room a couple years ago.
He's the saddest music in the world, which is I love, with Isabella Rossellini and Mark McKinney.
I think.
Yeah, she's been in a few of his, because she's this artistic weirdo as well. So I think I like whenever an artistic weirdo actor or actress works with an artistic weirdo filmmaker, and they just totally get each other. And he's definitely not a filmmaker for everybody. Like, I would never be like, Mom, sit down and watch this Guy Maddin movie with me. But he's just such a unique filmmaker, and I love that he's still out there making movies.
Well, speaking of like the way I was talking with Max Sennett, but the silent film and like early sound era, Guy Maddin to me almost has like, he uses like silent film aesthetics a lot to kind of like tell his stories and his visuals. So that's kind of, it ties it in there. When I was looking him up, I didn't really know his background, so I was trying to figure, because he's also on my list, so we do have one crossover so far out of 2.
All right.
So we're doing great so far. He studied economics, was a bank manager. He was like, did a house painting for a while. He didn't make his first film until he was 30 years old. So kind of opposite Xavier Dolan, where he just like, as soon as he could grab a camera, started making movies as a teenager. Guy Maddin, had some pretty solid life experience before he jumped in and started making movies, which I think is also really helpful. But just to give him even more street cred from the whole, like you said, artistic filmmaking kind of weirdo, he also does tons of short films, so it's just like in his blood to constantly be working. And he's also branched out in the last few years into doing like art installations as well, which makes perfect sense if you've seen any of his movies, that you could. I would love to be physically in a space that he has created an art installation for. I think that would be a pretty trippy experience, and pretty memorable as well.
Well, I've had the privilege of meeting him and spending some time with him, and he is kind of like the Canadian cliche of just like the nicest person on earth as well. Like, how you think of like, everyone always jokes about Canadians being so polite and friendly. He just really is. He's like, couldn't be more down to earth and just very sweet, nice guy. And honestly, like meeting him and talking to him, you wouldn't think like, this is the guy that made all those weird movies. Like, he just seems like this very unassuming, like, he almost comes across as like he's just like anyone's like high school teacher or something, and then to see like, this is where the saddest music in the world came from. Okay, bring it on. No, he's amazing.
All right, I'll start off. Then I'll do my last one. We'll see if we overlap with this one too, because there might be a possibility. I don't know if we've discussed his movies too much in depth before, but it's Denis Villeneuve.
Oh, of course we have. Yes.
Okay.
And I expected when you said that there was one.
Yeah.
That's who I was expecting you to talk about. So yes.
So I'm a huge fan of his movies. He started off it's one of those two, like, I think he has kind of transitioned all the way to Hollywood at this point. Again, I don't know where he necessarily resides at when he's not working, but so he's almost got like two parts to his career. He's got the Canadian part, and now he has like the Hollywood part, which is pretty fascinating because he doesn't seem like he signed up for studio projects like for the money. Like he wasn't doing a Transformers movie or big franchise. He didn't sign into the Marvel universe to direct a movie. He came here to the United States and to Hollywood. And did Prisoners was his first English language film, and then he followed up with Enemy, I think actually even the same calendar year, and then Sicario, Arrival, and most recently Blade Runner. But even in Canada, his feature debut that he made August 32nd on Earth, his first film got into the Cannes Film Festival. So I mean, he's right out of the gate. That's a pretty amazing accomplishment for just your first film.
Yeah, I need to see more of his early films. Like I think the first movie of his I saw was Incendies, and then I went back and I watched Polytechnique, which was a disturbing movie about a massacre in Montreal. Gun violence in Canada as opposed to here in America. So I haven't seen some of his earlier films, but
there's only two Canadian films actually that I have seen as well. I haven't gone all the way back through his Canadian career, but his and then he's got Dune coming up now too, which
I know I'm so excited for his version of Dune. And again, as much as I love David Lynch, his Dune is just such a misfire. But yeah, I think if anyone's going to make Dune properly, I think it's going to be him.
Well, his trajectory,
since we can't get Jodorowsky's version.
Interesting. Oh, that's true too. That would have been the ideal one. Since he came to America with Prisoners, Enemy, and Sicario, those are a different kind of grounded. Well, Enemy is a kind of trippy and weird, which I love. Maybe mostly towards the end, but they're much more just sort of like grounded. Like Prisoners is kind of a kidnapper thriller. Sicario is kind of the drug war kind of action movie. But then now he seems like he's moved into with Arrival and Blade Runner, and now Dune. It's like now he's heading off into the sci-fi portion of his career.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the final person I wanted to talk about is primarily known as a performer, not a director, and that is Sarah Polley, because I am just so impressed by the movies that she has actually made. Away From Her is just tragically brilliant.
Yeah.
I really like Take This Waltz, which a lot of people didn't see. We played it here at the Cedar Lee. I think it was probably 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
And with, Michelle Williams and Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman, it's just a really good, drama and but funny at the same time.
I think that was an audience expectation thing too. When you have Sarah Silverman and you've got Seth Rogen, people are like, the Seth Rogen movie, and then
and but it's a great film. So she doesn't look like she has been active lately, but I'm just hoping she gets either in front of or behind the camera soon, because I think she's amazing. So I don't know if she's taken some personal time off for her to have a life or what's going on, but I want another Sarah Polley movie, because she is, and I do think that even though her films are, I think they've been both take place here in the States, there is a sort of like Canadian sensibility to her still that I think she brings to her work.
Did she do a documentary also?
Oh yeah, Stories We Tell. Yeah, that was her last thing that she did. Yeah.
So we have been going strong here for, I think it's 46 weeks now of episodes, not missing a week. So we were actually taking a week's vacation from the show next week. But we do want to kind of preview the stuff that'll be opening on the 19th. So the first one is the documentary Spy Behind the Plate, which I think is a natural double feature with a movie that was kind of a little bit of a surprise hit. That last year called The Catcher Was a Spy with Paul Rudd, which is the story of, my baseball history is terrible, Mo Berg.
Is it? Oh gosh, now
who was the title gives you a little bit of a spoiler, sorry folks, but it's the spy behind the plate. He was a catcher, but then was also a spy during World War II. So this is the real life story of it, because this is the documentary version. So if you want to catch The Catcher Was a Spy on streaming or at your local library before that opens on the 19th, that will be a perfect double feature for you.
And then we're going to be opening The Art of Self-Defense, which is stars Jesse Eisenberg. It's a kind of quirky, dark comedy that's is right up Jesse Eisenberg's alley.
Jesse Eisenberg in a quirky, dark comedy. How new?
That's where he belongs.
This is one of those that the trailer itself just plays it up as this guy who's just sort of like afraid of everyone. He seems very meek and mild-mannered and the geek that Jesse Eisenberg often plays in movies, and then, starts taking self-defense courses because he doesn't want to be that guy anymore. And seems like comedy ensues, but then the trailer also has kind of a darker kind of tone in some of the scenes too. So I'm curious to see what kind of juggling act is going on with tones in that movie. Like, it doesn't seem overtly, slapsticky comedy, but it also doesn't seem like it's traditionally just, a full drama as well either.
Right.
So we will see you all in 2 weeks. Actually, we'll hear you all in 2 weeks. This is an audio format. But before we sign off...
They'll hear us. We don't hear them.
You'll hear us in 2 weeks when we are back on the air. But before we sign off, we do want to let you know about a few of the special events we have coming up this week.
The first film we've got coming up for our special event this week is our monthly screening as part of the Melt Barn Grill Late Shift of Tommy Wiseau's So Bad It's Wonderful classic, The Room, and that's going to be playing Saturday, July 13th at 10 o'clock. Then next we have our ongoing National Theater's part of their 10th anniversary presentation of an encore screening of Benedict Cumberbatch in Hamlet. That's going to be Sunday, July 14th at 11 a.m.
And on July 17th, Wednesday at 10 a.m., the continuing family film series will be showing Puss in Boots. That is at 10 a.m. on July 17th. Admission to all the family films every Wednesday is just $1. And then later on that same day, on July 17th, that same Wednesday, the Met Summer Encore Series is, I think, probably one of the biggest opera titles. Since I don't know opera, if I know the title, it's a big title in my book. So it's Aida, playing at 7 p.m. on July 17th. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedarly Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.